A quiet village, a shocking killing, and within just a few days, investigators had identified and arrested a suspect living hundreds of miles away. For many people, that raised an obvious question: how could police possibly know where to look so quickly? At first glance, the answer seems almost too simple. Some assumed a single CCTV camera or doorbell recording instantly revealed everything. But major investigations rarely hinge on one dramatic clue. Instead, they are usually built piece by piece, with detectives connecting information that, on its own, might seem completely ordinary. The real story is often far more methodical than the headlines suggest. So, what happens between discovering a crime scene and knocking on one specific door, far away? Understanding that journey reveals how modern investigations really work. If that widely shared explanation isn't the full story, where would investigators actually begin? Before exploring how investigators may have narrowed their search, it's important to separate confirmed facts from public assumptions. Authorities have released a timeline describing when Anne Widdecombe was last seen publicly, when police believe the attack occurred, when her body was discovered, and when arrests were made during the investigation. They have also confirmed that detectives pursued multiple lines of inquiry, and that certain details remain part of an active investigation. What they have not done is explain every investigative step that led from the crime scene to identifying a suspect. That gap has naturally encouraged discussion online, with theories ranging from CCTV footage to mobile phone data and vehicle tracking. However, discussion is not the same as evidence. In this video, we'll focus on how investigations of this kind generally unfold, using established policing methods and publicly available information to explain what detectives typically examine. The aim isn't to guess hidden facts or reach conclusions ahead of official findings. Instead, it's to understand the process behind a complex investigation and why careful analysis matters. With the known facts established, the next question becomes, what would detectives actually do first? Keeping that distinction in mind allows us to evaluate each investigative possibility more fairly, appreciating both the power and the limits of modern policing before drawing any firm conclusions ourselves. Investigators rarely begin by searching for a suspect. Their first priority is securing the scene to preserve every possible piece of evidence. Forensic specialists photograph the location, document injuries, collect fingerprints, DNA, footwear impressions, and any objects that might explain what happened. Even seemingly insignificant details can become valuable later when combined with other findings. At the same time, detectives begin building a timeline. They identify when the victim was last seen, who spoke with them, and when anything unusual was first noticed. Phone records, scheduled appointments, deliveries, and witness accounts help establish the sequence of events. Every confirmed timestamp narrows the window investigators need to examine. Witnesses are equally important: neighbors, delivery drivers, passers-by, friends, relatives, and anyone who visited the area may remember something that seemed ordinary at the time. A parked vehicle, an unfamiliar face, or an unusual sound might not mean much on its own, but several independent observations can reinforce one another. Detectives also consider the surrounding area. They identify roads leading into and out of the location, nearby cameras, possible entry and exit routes, and places where additional evidence could exist. These early decisions shape everything that follows, helping investigators focus resources efficiently while avoiding assumptions that could send the inquiry in the wrong direction. Although the public often sees only the arrest or the breakthrough, the first day is usually about patient groundwork. Detectives are not chasing dramatic revelations, they are assembling a reliable foundation from hundreds of small observations. Once those pieces begin fitting together, patterns emerge that were impossible to see at the start. Once detectives understand the scene, they begin looking beyond it to test those emerging patterns against wider sources of information, ensuring every promising lead is supported by evidence before major decisions are made. Step by step, once investigators have established a reliable timeline, the search often expands far beyond the immediate crime scene. Modern investigations frequently rely on combining information from multiple sources, each providing only part of the overall picture. One camera may capture a passing vehicle, another is show its direction of travel, while a witness account helps confirm the timing. Individually, these details may seem insignificant. Together, they can reveal a clear sequence of events. CCTV is one of the most familiar investigative tools. Cameras operated by businesses, local authorities, transport networks, and private homeowners can help establish where vehicles or people were seen at particular times. Investigators do not simply look for dramatic footage. They carefully compare recordings from different locations to understand movements before and after an incident. Another important system is automatic number plate recognition, commonly known as ANPR. These cameras read vehicle registration plates and record where and when a vehicle passes a specific location. If investigators identify a registration that appears relevant, ANPR recorded may help reconstruct sections of that vehicle's journey. On their own, those records do not explain why a vehicle was present, but they can provide valuable context when examined alongside other evidence. Digital forensics adds another layer. Subject to legal authority and applicable procedures, investigators may examine electronic devices for information that supports or challenges existing timelines. They may also review publicly available digital evidence or other lawfully obtained records relevant to the investigation. The purpose is not to rely on a single device or source, but to compare information from multiple places and test whether it forms a consistent picture. Financial records, fuel purchases, transport receipts, or other documented activity can also contribute when legally available. A payment made at a particular time, for example, may help verify part of a journey or support another piece of evidence. Each source strengthens or weakens the overall timeline rather than standing alone. This is why major investigations are rarely solved by one remarkable discovery. Detectives compare evidence, eliminate inconsistencies, and cross-reference every reliable detail until independent sources begin telling the same story. The strength of the investigation comes from the way these separate strands reinforce one another. By the time investigators believe they understand what happened, the conclusion is usually supported by a network of evidence rather than a single decisive clue. But technology alone rarely tells the whole story. By this stage, investigators often possess far more information than they can immediately use. The next task is deciding which leads deserve closer attention and which can be ruled out. Detectives compare timelines, witness statements, forensic findings, digital records, and physical evidence to see whether they support one another or reveal contradictions. When details fail to match, investigators don't automatically assume deception. Sometimes memories are imperfect, clocks differ, or recordings capture only part of an event. Routine activity is also filtered out. Local residents traveling familiar routes, regular deliveries, or vehicles with obvious explanations are gradually separated from movements that appear unusual within the established timeline. That process helps narrow thousands of data points into a manageable number of realistic leads. Verification is equally important. Detectives look for independent evidence that supports each possibility. A witness account might align with camera footage, while forensic evidence confirms that the timing is plausible. If new information conflicts with an earlier theory, investigators adjust their approach rather than forcing the facts to fit. That willingness to change direction is one reason major investigations can evolve rapidly as evidence accumulates. Importantly, ruling people out is just as valuable as identifying potential suspects. Every eliminated lead allows detectives to concentrate resources where the evidence is strongest. It also reduces the risk of confirmation bias, where early assumptions influence later decisions. Careful investigations remain flexible because every new piece of reliable evidence has the potential to reshape the picture. This is often the point when investigation begins to accelerate, as the remaining leads become increasingly focused, and detectives can devote more time to testing the strongest explanations against the available evidence. Ensuring every significant decision rests on careful analysis, rather than assumption alone, before any arrest is made or public conclusions are drawn at all. To many people, an arrest can seem almost instantaneous. News reports announce that a suspect has been taken into custody, creating the impression that investigators solved the case overnight. In reality, that visible moment usually comes after days of coordinated work. Detectives, forensic specialists, analysts, and uniformed officers may already have assembled timelines, examined evidence, interviewed witnesses, reviewed recordings, and compared countless details before deciding that legal grounds exist for an arrest. That contrast between public perception and investigative reality matters. Modern policing is rarely about one spectacular breakthrough. Instead, it depends upon information flowing between different teams, specialist expertise, careful verification, and lawful access to relevant evidence. Each confirmed finding strengthens or weakens another, allowing investigators to refine their understanding before acting. When enough independent evidence begins pointing in the same direction, the investigation can appear to accelerate dramatically. Yet that apparent speed is often the result of patient preparation, not luck. Every interview, forensic examination, document, and technical lead contributes to the bigger picture. By the time officers make an arrest, they are typically responding to an accumulation of evidence rather than a single discovery. Understanding that process helps explain why complex investigations sometimes move faster than expected, while still requiring extensive work behind the scenes. Even after an arrest, investigators continue testing evidence, following new leads, and preparing the case for the next stage. Even after an arrest, however, the investigation is far from over. Prosecutors must assess the available evidence. Investigators may conduct further forensic examinations, interview additional witnesses, and review newly recovered material. Every step helps ensure that any future court proceedings are supported by reliable, thoroughly tested evidence gathered lawfully, and presented fairly throughout, after an arrest. The investigation often enters its most detailed phase. Detectives continue gathering evidence, not because the case is finished, but because every conclusion must withstand careful legal scrutiny. Forensic specialists may carry out additional examinations, while investigators review digital devices obtained under appropriate legal authority, compare witness statements, and follow any new leads that emerge. They also prepare evidence for prosecutors, who assess whether the available material meets the legal threshold for charges. Investigators remain responsible for examining evidence that supports or challenges their working theories. An arrest is therefore an important but intermediate milestone. Allegations remain allegations unless proven in court, and every suspect is entitled to the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. That principle protects both individuals and the integrity of the justice system. Looking back at the investigation, the original mystery begins to make more sense, revealing how patient, methodical work, rather than dramatic breakthroughs, usually shapes successful criminal investigations from beginning to end, step by careful step, guided by evidence, lawful procedures, professional judgment, and continual verification of facts throughout. Returning to the original question, the investigation appears far less mysterious once you understand how modern policing actually works. Cases like this are rarely solved by one extraordinary clue or a single piece of footage. Instead, detectives build their understanding through timelines, forensic evidence, witness accounts, technology, and careful analysis, checking each piece against the others before reaching conclusions. That methodical approach is what allows complex investigations to progress quickly while remaining grounded in evidence. As official proceedings continue, additional details may emerge that clarify exactly how investigators reach their decisions. Until then, the most important lesson is that successful investigations depend on many connected pieces rather than one dramatic breakthrough. Continue following verified updates, because the complete picture often emerges gradually as investigations advance and court proceedings reveal additional evidence, helping explain not only what happened but how investigators reach their conclusions through patience, professionalism, lawful procedures, and persistence.